Books are not just information, they are codes. Codes to reshape how you move, think, conquer. Most people misunderstand what a book truly is. They believe it is a collection of words, stories, or facts. But the powerful understand something else entirely. A book, when chosen wisely and read with intensity, is a strategic weapon. It is not passive, it is a living system. An encoded map designed to transmit power from one mind to another. Not just to inform, but to transform. When the ordinary person reads, they do so to feel good, to pass time, to be entertained. But the strategist reads with a different purpose, to upgrade their operating system. Every page is scanned for tools, tactics, and laws of power that others overlook. Every paragraph is a field of buried insight, waiting to be mined, decoded, and implemented. When the powerful read, they are not absorbing words, they are extracting blueprints. Books are time machines, they collapse centuries into minutes. When you open The Art of War, you aren't reading, you're entering the war room of Sun Tzu, you're studying patterns of deception, leverage, and ambush. When you absorb the 48 laws of power, you are not memorizing rules. You are aligning yourself with timeless principles that have governed the rise and fall of empires. You begin to see reality not as it appears, but as it truly is. These are not just pages, they are codes, codes of seduction, war, influence, psychology, and power. Each book contains within it the distilled essence of lifetimes. Great men wrote what they could not say aloud, what only those prepared to understand would ever grasp. If you read them as mere stories, you miss the signal. But if you read as a strategist, a student of mastery, you begin to crack the code. The books that change your life are never the ones that make you feel safe. They disturb, they confront your illusions. They force you to ask, have I been asleep? Have I been moving blindly? These books demand that you sharpen, that you evolve, that you stop reacting like the world owes you kindness and start moving like it owes you nothing, but will respect your strength. When you read like this, you no longer walk into rooms uncertain. You begin to see through words, through smiles, through weakness disguised as virtue. Your movements become deliberate. Your thinking becomes layered. Your actions become precise. So no, books are not merely information. That is what the average mind sees. But the powerful understand they are coded systems of transformation. And when read correctly, they do not just inform you, they reform you. They rewire your instincts, they give you vision where others are blind, they make you dangerous, not by accident but by design. You read as the weak read, passively to escape, but the powerful read to control, to influence, to evolve. There is a vast difference between reading and reading with intention. The weak pick up books the way they pick up distractions, momentarily, carelessly, without aim. For them, reading is an escape hatch, not a weapon. It is fantasy, not fuel. They read to feel better, not to become better. They seek comfort in words, not confrontation. They avoid books that challenge, preferring those that validate their mediocrity. But the powerful, they do not read to escape, they read to invade. Every word is dissected, every sentence weighed. They are not entertained by knowledge, they are sharpened by it. Their eyes scan pages like a general scans a battlefield, searching not for relief but for strategic advantage. They understand that every great book is a blueprint for dominance, and to ignore that is to remain small. The weak read to avoid pain, the powerful read to confront it. They devour the writings of those who saw further, thought deeper, moved smarter. They study betrayal, manipulation, ambition, not with judgment, but with curiosity. How did this man rise? What did this woman see that others ignored? What patterns repeat in power, in war, in empire? These are the questions that drive the powerful to read, and in that process they evolve. When the weak close a book, their world remains the same. When the powerful close a book, they are not the same person. A single line can become a law they live by. A single story can shift the way they see trust, loyalty, leadership, or love. Every insight is a piece of armor. Every mistake recorded is a wound they now avoid. You can spot the difference easily. The weak read to agree, the powerful read to understand. even what they disagree with. The weak fear the mind of the enemy, the powerful study it, the weak flinch at dark truths. The powerful adapt to them because they know reality does not care for your feelings. Reality rewards clarity, and books, if read with clarity, become weapons. This is not about reading more, it's about reading differently. Reading not as a civilian, but as a strategist, not to be filled with noise, but to extract signal, not to escape life, but to master it. The powerful turn books into movement, into momentum, into memory that sticks to the bones. So you have a choice. You can keep reading as the weak read, grazing, drifting, forgetting, or you can start reading like the powerful, decoding, applying, transforming. One keeps you entertained, the other makes you unstoppable. The second book breaks the illusion of emotion. It trains you to outthink the manipulator, to become emotionally sovereign. Emotions are not truth, they are reactions, chemical, historical, often inherited. And yet the masses live by them as if they are sacred. They trust their feelings more than their analysis, more than reality. That is why they are so easily swayed, controlled, used. The manipulator doesn't attack your logic, he hijacks your emotion. He makes you feel seen, afraid, angry, guilty, and then he moves you like a pawn. But the second book, The Laws of Human Nature, rips that illusion apart. It teaches you the anatomy of emotion, not to suppress it, but to master it. Because power begins with emotional sovereignty. Until you can name what you feel, dissect why it's there, and hold it at a distance, you are still a slave, no matter how intelligent you appear. You cannot lead if your anger leads you. You cannot strategize if your envy clouds your vision. You cannot connect if your insecurity speaks louder than your intentions. The manipulator knows this. He looks for your triggers, not your talents. And once he finds them, he pulls quietly, you react loudly, he wins. The second book teaches you to reverse this dynamic. It makes your inner world less volatile and your outer movements more precise. You begin to see what others miss, a forced smile, a shift in tone, a micro expression of contempt. You read people the way a surgeon reads symptoms, not emotionally but diagnostically. You're no longer confused by behavior, you anticipate it. And when you anticipate, you control. You start to recognize the masks people wear, the victim who weaponizes guilt, the charming leader who hides tyranny behind charisma, the lover who feigns vulnerability to gain access. You stop being surprised by betrayal because you've seen the signs before. The book doesn't make you paranoid, it makes you perceptive. More importantly, it turns your gaze inward. You begin to study your own programming. Where does that jealousy come from? Why do compliments manipulate you? What old wound is shaping your current decisions? You begin to undo the trap from the inside. And as that happens, you become emotionally sovereign. Unshaken, unlured, people begin to feel it. Your calm unsettles them. Your silence forces honesty. Your lack of reaction reveals truth. You no longer beg for validation. You carry it within, and this is dangerous. Because when you are emotionally sovereign, no one can seduce you with guilt, trap you with praise, or steer you with fear. You choose your response, you decide your state. This is what the second book gives you, not comfort, but clarity. Not therapy, but transformation. It does not flatter your emotions, it refines them, and in that refinement, you become something rare, unbreakable, unmanipulated, and unbothered. The third book is war, but psychological war. It makes you dangerous in the most elegant way, through strategy. War is not always bloodshed. Sometimes it's silence. Sometimes it's a glance, a withdrawal, a well-timed response that shifts the balance of power. True war, the kind that changes nations, reputations, and destinies, begins in the mind. And that is what the third book teaches, not how to fight harder, but how to fight smarter. The 33 Strategies of War is not about violence, it's about precision, discipline, mastery over reaction. Most people move emotionally. They react to insults, chase validation, explode under pressure. They fight every battle, respond to every attack, and get exhausted by the war they don't understand. But the strategist, the one shaped by the third book, learns to choose his battlefield. He does not fight to prove strength. He fights to shift power, and he does it with elegance. The strategies are ancient but timeless. Flanking the enemy is not just for soldiers. It's for the boardroom, the family dinner, the negotiation table. The art of timing is not reserved for generals. It belongs to the artist, the entrepreneur, the leader. This book rewires your understanding of conflict. It teaches you that confrontation is not always loud. That retreat is sometimes power, that to lure is often wiser than to push. You learn to see people not just as individuals, but as players in a game they don't even know they're playing. Their needs, their fears, their patterns, they become visible to you. You study them like terrain, and when you move with strategy, not emotion. You are no longer baited, you bait. The elegance lies in subtlety. You disarm with charm. You divide your opposition without raising your voice. You attack through misdirection. While others react, you orchestrate. They believe they've won until they realize you never entered the battle they were fighting. You rewrote the rules entirely. What this book gives you is not brute power. It is psychological leverage. It transforms you into a master of presence, of pressure, of pace. You learn when to disappear, when to strike, when to hold. You stop being predictable, and in war, unpredictability is supremacy. This strategy is not for the insecure. It requires patience, analysis, and the willingness to sacrifice ego for long-term victory. The third book is for those who seek to become not just strong, but untouchable. It will not make you loud, but it will make your silence more dangerous than their shouting. And in that silence, power accumulates, influence grows, respect shifts. You no longer need to dominate with force. You dominate with mind. The most elegant war is the one that leaves no trace, but rewrites every outcome. That is the war this book prepares you for. That is the kind of dangerous it teaches you to become. These are not just books. They are tools of transformation, weapons for those willing to stand outside the herd. The average mind sees a book as a pastime, a luxury, a momentary escape from the monotony of life. But the awakened mind, the ambitious mind, sees a book as a tool, sharp, dangerous, and alive, not written for entertainment, but for execution. These are not novels of comfort, they are manuals of power. Weapons disguised as pages. Transformation doesn't happen by accident. It demands friction. These books do not flatter you, they confront you. They expose your illusions, your emotional addictions, your predictable reactions. They tear down the fragile ego built on opinion and replace it with timeless law, forged in history, war, seduction, psychology, and power. Each line challenges you to stop drifting and start designing your ascent. But this path is not for everyone. Most will choose the herd, where it's safe, where thinking is outsourced, where comfort is the reward and mediocrity is the ceiling. The herd fears change, mocks ambition, and clings to consensus. These books ask you to step away from all of that, to walk alone, to become a weapon of clarity in a fog of confusion. They show you that transformation is brutal before it is beautiful, that before you evolve, you must unravel. Old identities must be burned, old narratives shattered. You must unlearn the soft conditioning that told you to be agreeable, modest, non-threatening. These books teach you that real power is not given, it is seized. And the first battlefield is within. Each book becomes a mirror. It shows you where you've been weak, where you've been manipulated, where you've betrayed your own potential. But it also shows you the architecture of transformation, step by step, strategy by strategy. The laws of power aren't theoretical, they're historical. They've governed kings and tyrants, rebels and revolutionaries, and now they can govern you, but only if you dare, because once you read with real intent, you can no longer unsee the truth. You begin to move differently. You speak less but with more weight. You observe more, react less. You calculate, you plan. You begin to stand out, not by trying, but by knowing. The herd will feel it. They will sense the change and try to pull you back, not out of malice, but out of fear. Your transformation threatens their comfort. Your clarity exposes their confusion. But if you've absorbed these books properly, you won't flinch. You'll stand taller, speak sharper, walk straighter, because you know now these books were not entertainment. They were tools that reshaped your identity, rewired your instincts, and rebuilt your inner empire. You are no longer one of them. You have stepped outside the herd, and now you carry weapons in your mind, silent, strategic, and unstoppable. You cannot become legendary by staying comfortable. Each book is a mirror and a weapon. The weak will flinch, the powerful will sharpen. Comfort is the enemy of greatness. It seduces you with ease, lulls you into routine, and blinds you to your own potential. The world is full of people who want to be remembered, but few are willing to endure the fire that forges legends. And fire doesn't always come from battle, it comes from truth, from words that cut, from pages that demand confrontation with self. The right books don't just speak to you, they stare back. They become mirrors so clear you cannot lie to yourself anymore. Most people read to reinforce who they are. The powerful read to become someone they are not yet. That's the difference. One reads for comfort, the other reads for transformation, and transformation is never easy. It demands pain, ego death, discomfort. When a book reveals a weakness in you, a flaw in how you think, react, or move, the average mind will retreat, it will flinch, it will rationalize the insight away. But the mind committed to mastery sharpens. Every great book is two things at once, a mirror that reflects your limitations and a weapon that arms you to overcome them. That duality is what makes them powerful. They don't just inform, they initiate. They don't just educate, they challenge. You read about power not to feel powerful, but to understand the dark and disciplined path required to become powerful. You study seduction not to manipulate, but to detect when it's being used on you. You learn strategy not to play games, but to stop being played, and that's where comfort becomes irrelevant, because once you've tasted truth, raw, unfiltered, unflattering, you no longer crave comfort. You crave clarity, you crave edge, you want your weaknesses exposed, your delusions shattered, your armor upgraded. You realize that flinching at truth is a form of defeat, so you choose to sharpen instead. Sharpening hurts, but it elevates. It creates a version of you that can't be manipulated by praise or destroyed by criticism. It teaches you to see the patterns beneath chaos, to hear the intention behind words, to move with force when others hesitate. You become precise, focused, unapologetic, and in that space, in that rare, elite space of discomfort transformed into power, legends are made, not by talent, not by chance, but by those who read not with soft hearts, but with steel minds, who see books not as an escape, but as a forge. So if you want comfort, read lightly, float on the surface, but if you want to be remembered, to carve your name into the spine of history, then read with fire. Let every book become a blade, let it cut, let it scar, let it sharpen you until you are no longer merely a reader, but a force. You think life will reward you for being nice. It rewards precision, power, mastery. These books are your blueprint. Niceness is a mask, one that society has taught you to wear to be accepted, to be liked, to be safe. But life is not designed to reward the agreeable. It rewards those who understand how to move with intent, how to think beyond emotion, how to act with calculated force. Niceness without strategy becomes submission. It makes you predictable, pliable, and powerless in the eyes of those who truly understand how the world works. The world doesn't operate on fairness. It operates on leverage, on positioning, on quiet influence, and the kind of person who thrives is not the one who seeks approval, but the one who studies patterns, learns the rules beneath the surface, and moves with deliberate precision. That's what these books teach you. They aren't about being liked. They're about being effective. Every page is a challenge. Are you going to live like the rest, ruled by emotion, enslaved by approval? Or are you going to rewire your mind to move with power? Because mastery is not about brute strength, it's about understanding systems, Whether it's the system of power, the system of seduction, the system of human nature, or the system of war, those who win are the ones who understand. And then act accordingly. When you open these books, you are not just gaining knowledge. You are inheriting centuries of lived strategy. You are learning from rulers, revolutionaries, seducers, strategists, generals, and survivors. You're seeing how they thought, how they moved, how they dismantled empires or built their own. They didn't do it by being nice. They did it by being precise, calculated, emotionally sovereign. Niceness alone is not strength. It is often used by the manipulator to extract what they want from you. You think you're being kind, but you're being used. You think you're building goodwill, but you're building a cage. That's why these books are essential. They are your blueprint out of mediocrity, out of manipulation, out of mental slavery. They don't ask you to become cold. They ask you to become clear, to see what's really happening in the spaces where people lie with smiles, to detect the power plays in relationships, business, politics, even within yourself. They show you how to sharpen your instincts, discipline your mind, and cultivate presence, the kind of presence that shifts rooms without raising your voice. Life is a game with high stakes, and no one is coming to hand you the crown because you are nice. You must earn it, not by begging, not by pleasing, but by becoming undeniable. These books are not for the faint of heart. They are for the one who is done being manipulated, done being overlooked, done being soft when the world demands steel. They are your blueprint to become what the world remembers. Not for how kind you were, but for how exact, how masterful, how unstoppable you became.